Good morning, and welcome to Ray on Sports. I am your host, Johnny Ray. We're here for another week of Ray on Sports, and this week I have a very special guest who's coming on, Mr. Jeff Patterson. And I will bring him on right now, and I'll give you a little bio on him, and he can take you from there.
How you doing?
Good. How are you, sir? How are you?
I'm doing good. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Okay, so let me give you an introduction on Mr. Patterson. Jeff Patterson's from Portland, Oregon. He has over 36 years of experience practicing and teaching the meditative and martial arts. As a founder of Northwest Fighting Arts Portland, Oregon, Tai Chi Academy, and the Yielding Warrior, where he emphasizes transformative power of meditative and martial art practices, practically the yielding concept. He has published 2 books and hundreds of instructional videos. Founder of the Yielding Warrior online program, and has worked with over 1,000 students around the world. Well, they kind of summed up a little bit, Jeff?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. Would you like to expound even more?
Sure. So I started up my academy here 30 years ago. I've been running academy out of Portland, Oregon here since 1994. I always, for the majority of my life, have been into the martial arts. And back when I was around 19 or 20, I was very much into Western boxing. And, I just loved the thrill of the sport. It was challenging physically, mentally, very strategic. Everything about it was something that I was really into. I used to go to the gym 5-6 days a week. And this boxing gym that I used to go to just a few blocks here from my academy here in Portland, Oregon, there was a coach there who was a really well-known coach, and I wanted to get to spend some time with him. And at a boxing gym, it's run a lot different than what a normal traditional fitness style class would be, in that, in a normal fitness class, you go in and there's an instructor and students will all come in to see the same instructor. Well, in a boxing gym, you go in and there's usually 4 or 5 coaches, and each one of those coaches might have 3, 4, or 5 athletes that they're working with. Well, this one coach, every time he'd come in, I'd always try to show up around the same time and let him see that, I was disciplined and I was really worth his time to help me out. And so I followed him around for about 3 or 4 months. And finally, after getting to get his attention a little bit, he started showing me some stuff. And it was only about 2 or 3 weeks of him starting to help me out when he said something to me that changed my life forever. And that he told me if I really wanted to be a good boxer, I should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. Now, at the time, I was this young kid thinking, isn't Tai Chi for like old people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better boxer? And I had a lot of respect for him, and I started doing the practice, and, it's changed my life in so many ways. And through the years, I've had thousands of students come through the academy, and I've literally heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives. And that's why I've been so passionate about it and trying to spread the word. My last couple books on meditation, and my online program, which has been the main motivation for that, because I just want to get that message out there.
Okay. Sounds good, sir. Sounds good. I'm glad. I'm happy that you came on today. I know a little bit about it, but when it comes to martial art and Tai Chi, we see the movies and things of that nature, and so we get a definition from that, but we don't hear it from an actual person that's in the in that field. So I'm glad that you came on to kind of expound on it and help those like myself who don't fully understand it. Because you see movies like Bloodsport, you see like the Bruce Lee movies, and people take it from there and says, oh, that's Tai Chi, just meditating and kicking somebody's butt or something like that. But I know it's more. I know it's more than that. So can you expound on that?
Yeah, so the meditative arts is pretty wide range. There's a lot of different directions you could go, and I break it down into there's the athletic or the combative side of the practice, the therapeutic side, the medical side, the philosophical side, and then also the meditative or spiritual side. And there's many professional athletes these days in all sports. It doesn't matter if it's basketball, football, baseball, whatever it is, that are turning to the meditative arts because it improves their performance and heightens their abilities. When Phil Jackson was coaching the Chicago Bulls, when Michael Jordan was on the team, he was having the team practice Tai Chi and meditation. And here you got the best athletes in the world practicing meditation right. to improve their game. And so there's something to be said about that. And it's not only does it improve your performance, but it improves your life in every aspect of what we do. So within the meditative arts, we have what we call the 5 regulations: regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. Regulating the body is the easiest one to understand. And it's the idea that, think about if you have ever been sitting at your computer for 4 or 5 hours and your shoulders are rounded forward and you start feeling lethargic and maybe a little bit tired, your neck gets stiff. This is very depleting. And then think about another time where the most important person in your world walks into the room and your body perks up and your energy is just feeling like it's on top of the world. This one idea of how we hold our posture and our alignment and our structure can change our overall energetic state. And this is the first stage in the meditative arts, is how do we regulate the body in everything we do, whether we're doing a Tai Chi practice or we're doing athletics or we're sitting down at our desk or walking around or whatever it is. Because the more that we can maintain that structure and alignment throughout the day, the more that energy in our state will change throughout the day. And then we have regulating the breath. And regulating the breath is a very deep topic, and it's something that you could study for the rest of your life. But, if you look into Qigong, a lot of times you'll hear people refer to Qigong as the science of the breath, because there's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies and ways that we can use the breath. And an example of this would be, we kind of broadly categorize these breathing strategies into yin methods and yang methods. Yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style of meditations and breathing strategies. And an example of a yin breath would be as if you ever listen to somebody sleep and pay attention to their breath, and you'll notice that they naturally do longer inhales and shorter exhales. And this is the body's natural way of bringing your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so if you want to emulate this side of the breath, we can lengthen the inhales, maybe do soft retentions at the end of the inhale to help bring that energy inward. And this is very good for stress reduction. If you're having an anxiety attack, if we're needing to improve our focus, there's lots of reasons why we would focus on this yin side of the breath. Then we have the yang side of the breath. And the yang side of the breath is more powerful. It's kind of like if you ever had to push your car, you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is you exhale, put tension in the breath, make the breath audible, and this helps generate power and energy. You'll notice a lot of athletes or a lot of fighters before an event, they'll do chanting or they'll do some deep breathing exercises to help get them pumped up. And this is one of the ways that we can use the breath to change our energetic state. And once you start learning how to use the breath as a strategy now we can use it to control our physical, mental, and emotional outcomes. And in Chinese philosophy, they call this balancing the kan and li, or the fire and water. And, we all go through the day with emotional ups and downs. Well, some people are like a roller coaster, others of us may be a little more balanced. But when you start noticing these imbalances and you understand how to use the breath, when you see yourself starting to feel a little depleted, we can use the breath to bring us back up. And when you feel yourself starting to get a little bit excited, you can use the breath to help bring you back down and maintain that balance. This conserves our energy rather than being on this roller coaster where we're up and down and kind of all over the place. And so the breath is a real essential tool in cultivating a meditation practice. Then we have regulating the mind. And regulating the mind is, again, just like the breath, it's a lifestyle practice, and it's something that you could spend the rest of your life doing. And one of the most common things I hear people say that are coming to the meditative arts is that I've tried meditation before, it just didn't work for me. I couldn't quiet my mind. And somewhere along the way, people got this misconception that in order to meditate, you have to be in this state of nirvana, and you have to be like in this blissful place where nothing can affect you. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I've personally been studying the meditative arts for over 36 years. I've been an avid student. I've traveled around the world many times and trained with teachers all over the planet. And I've never once met a meditation teacher that doesn't get distracted. And so just because you're getting distracted when you practice, don't feel like you can't do it. Now, that said, when you do your practice, say you're doing a sitting meditation or a movement meditation like Tai Chi or Qigong, whatever it is, and you do this for 20 minutes, and say you get distracted 50 times during that 20 minutes. Every time you get distracted, you use your breath, you use your posture, you use the movement, whatever it is you're doing, to help bring you back to focus and find that center. And it's kind of like you're getting a repetition in the gym. Every time you get distracted, you're coming back to center. And you start building up this strength and this resilience and this ability to have these distractions in our lives and find that center and find that balance. And you do this all day, or not all day, but you have a daily ritual practice that you do every day. And you do this for 1 month, 5 months, 5 years. And eventually you gain so much momentum and power and focus that no matter what happens to you, you could be walking down the street and somebody could say something to throw you off your game, or you could have a stressful day at work or whatever it is, or you could be in the game and have a bad play and not be getting distracted. And you're able to come back to focus and find that center and have very little time where you're unbalanced. And this is one of the ways that we use the mind in our regulations to help us maintain that focus. And all too often, we're all guilty of it, is we'll get distracted and we have a hard time letting go. There's this
Right.
there's this story that I really enjoy of these two monks, and they're walking down this dirt road after a big rainstorm, and they come up to this beautiful lady, and she's standing on the other side of this big mud puddle, and she's crying. And the older monk yells across the puddle and he says, "Ma'am, can I help you? Is everything okay?" And she says, "Yes, I need to be somewhere. And if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." And so the older monk, he rolls up his pant legs, walks across the puddle to the other side, picks her up, puts her on his back, carries her to the other side, sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk take off down the road, and they get a couple miles down the road, and the younger monk is just furious at this point. And he says, we're not supposed to touch ladies, but yet you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk looks down at him and he says, "You're still thinking about that lady? I left her back there at the puddle." And it's just a simple example of how many times do we let these things affect us, and we carry them 2 miles down the road before we finally let them go. And having this
Right.
ability to maintain that focus and come back to center is a real important part and skill that's developed by integrating meditation into your life. And then
Wow.
the fourth regulation is regulating the energy. And regulating the energy is um, easy to do if you have got to a high level of regulating the body, the breath, and the mind. And regulating the energy we use with different meditations, and we could literally talk for the next couple hours on different ways that we could use moving the energy in the body and different meditations we could do with different energies in the body. But this is kind of a basic idea of that. And then lastly is regulating the spirit. And regulating the spirit is kind of the ultimate goal with um, a lifestyle practitioner or somebody who is living a monk lifestyle and working towards that stage of enlightenment. And I've personally, like I said, I've been in this practice for a long time and met a lot of people. I've never once met anybody who I would consider to be enlightened. However, that is kind of like the ultimate stage of the practice. And so with these 5 regulations, you can see by incorporating them that they can affect anything we do in life.
Wow. Wow. So when you and, okay, so let's go back a little bit. When you talk about how things can how certain things can have it with people. Like you said, where certain people that you come across, they'll give you that energy and you'll be okay. Are there people that can give you negative energy that can bring you down?
Oh, for sure. We all experience that, and that's one of the great things about having a strong mind and developing this practice, because it's easy to get caught up walking down that road for 2 miles being frustrated over what somebody said. But if you're able to
Mhm.
maintain your center and stay present and not let what they said throw you off your game, it's a lot easier to not let those negative distractions take you one way or the other. And so there's one of the philosophical concepts that I'm really passionate about in the meditative arts is the idea of yielding. In my last book, The Yielding Warrior, I talk about the 3 different ways that we use yielding. There's physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. Physical yielding is the idea that I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force. And now I can respond with less effort. So I'm not trying to butt heads with you and see if I'm a bigger, stronger guy than you. I just yield to what you're doing. And I put myself in a position where I can respond with less effort to get where I need to go. Now, it's obvious how this is very beneficial in athletics or in the combat sports, because so many times we come up against athletes who are bigger and stronger than us, and we need to learn how to use that force to our advantage rather than butt heads with it, or we're going to lose. And so this has been used for generations in the martial arts, and it's a very effective form of how to deal with that aggressive nature in people. Now, in order to be good at physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. The body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. Now, it takes years and years to get to a very high level of this, but right from the beginning, you start noticing things inside yourself that we didn't notice before by incorporating meditation into our lives. And this is where it gets very interesting. And now we're kind of moving into what I call mental yielding. So say, for example, I say something that unsettles you. And because I'm more in tune with what's going on inside myself, I can also see things more clearly in other people. So as soon as I notice an unbalance in you, I can adjust the conversation and keep us in a happy place. Then if I'm not paying attention to that, and pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to slap me upside the head. And so learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions is extremely powerful. One, you're just being more considerate, which is something we should all do anyway. And two, it allows you to be strategic so you can guide a conversation in a positive direction with the least amount of resistance. And this is important in our personal relationships, in business, in sales, and negotiations. I mean, there's so many different applications of how we can use this. Then we have what we call emotional yielding. And emotional yielding is kind of coming back to your question a couple minutes ago, where things oftentimes will happen to us and we will respond and we'll go down a path, and we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with yielding, if we could have taken a step back from a focused perspective and realized, maybe this is a better approach, a lot of times it can save us a lot of heartache on the other side. And, I've been explaining this idea of yielding for years here at the Academy. And one of the most common things I'll hear people say is that, that makes a lot of sense. I get it. I use yielding all the time. And I would agree in that I think everybody uses some degree of yielding all the time. However, it's kind of like if you or I were to go into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, I guarantee you he would see things about the timeline and the series of events that I know at least I would have no clue of. And the meditative arts helps us see things inside ourselves and inside other people that most people will go through their lives and never have a clue of. And it's really heightens your awareness and your sensitivity, which is one of the things that kind of makes it almost a bit magical, if you will.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So we're on Rayon Sports talking to Mr. Jeff Patterson. You mind if I call you Jeff?
Yes,
is it
sir.
okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Oh, Mr. Patterson, whatever one you prefer, Mr. Patterson and Jeff.
Jeff is good.
So let me get a couple questions into you. How did you come into meditation? How did you start?
Well, it was from my boxing coach. He had me start doing the practice in hopes that, I was taking it on thinking that it's going to improve my boxing performance, which it did. But little did I know that because I got so into the meditative practice, that started becoming my main focus. And that was nothing that was ever expected. I kind of a funny story in that, when he first started me practicing and doing Tai Chi form, he showed me the first couple movements of a form. And he did this in the first couple weeks. And then he didn't show me anything again for about 4 or 5 months. And I was practicing an hour and a half every day. I'd go down in my basement. I'd go through these few movements. And I got to the point where I was getting frustrated thinking, man, is this guy ever going to show me anything? What am I doing? And I will never forget, one day I went down in my basement to do my practice and I looked up at the clock and an hour and a half had gone by and it felt like 10 or 15 minutes. And from that point on, I was hooked. I was like, there's something here to this stuff. I got to figure it out. And so that's kind of been a major influence and driver in my life ever since.
Okay. Now, you talked about the different types of meditation. And I noticed there's 3 types of meditation. There's ritual, there's active, and there's philosophical meditation. So can you expound on those 3 types of meditation?
Well, I break those down into ways that you can do a meditative practice. So there's movement meditation practices, there's sitting practices, there's standing meditation, there's breathing exercises, there's philosophical things that we can do to kind of work our meditative practice. A ritual practice is where you set time aside every day. And this is the most important thing for anybody thinking about starting a meditation practice, is you want to do a little bit every day on your own. And it could be done in as little as 20 minutes. You don't need to retire to a cave and meditate for the rest of your life. But if you just did a little bit every day and were consistent with that, that would be a ritual practice. And that could be a Tai Chi form. It could be a Qigong set. It could be a sitting meditation, a standing meditation. There's a lot of different things that you could do in that ritual time. Now, one mistake I see a lot of people doing is that there's so many, you could go onto YouTube and find a billion videos on this practice and this practice. And when you're doing a meditation ritual practice, don't listen to an audio and don't watch a video. These are great ways to learn the practice, and that's okay to watch a video or listen to an audio to understand. But the meditative arts are called the internal arts for a reason. And it's meant to have a time where every day you can go and you can look inside. And if you're watching a video or you're listening to an audio, you're thinking outside. You're trying to take these outside inputs and bring them in. You're not listening internally. And so while
Now,
they're
Jeff,
good.
Jeff, you're taking. I think you're taking the money away from people who make these audio videos, but that's okay. So explain more about that, because that strikes that piqued something with me, because you're saying that you really don't need like outside audio to do a meditation, or you don't need an outside video to do a meditation. Because are you saying that outside audio or that outside video would distract you from the meditation that you're trying to do?
So yeah, and so what I'm saying is that those could be great tools to help you learn the practice. But when you're doing your daily consistent ritual practice that you do every day, go ahead and give those things a rest and just do it where you're turning internally, because that's where you're going to get the most value out of your time. And that's the whole goal of incorporating a meditative practice into your life, is to get to deeper levels of practice. And the only way you're going to get to those profound, deeper levels of practice is turning inward. And so I think that because there, like you said, there's so many apps out there and there's so many videos, and people think that could be a replacement, where they're meant to be more of a learning aid. And so just don't use those for a crutch, is what I mean. And then that would be an example of like a ritual focus. Within your ritual practice, you also want to integrate active practices. And active practices are great tools that we can integrate into our life, because meditation's meant to be more of a way of life and less of a hobby that we do once in a while. And so active practices help us integrate some of these strategies and these ways to improve our awareness in all of our day-to-day activities. You can do these when you're walking down the street or standing in line at the grocery store, and they could be as simple as counting out 15 breaths, or doing some spinal rotations, or something to help bring our awareness back into our body and our mind in that present moment. And you can do, like, for beginners, I always recommend, set an alarm on your phone to go off every 60 or 90 minutes and just count out 10 breaths. It's a great place to start and help kind of bring you into that rhythm. Along with a ritual practice, in a short amount of time, you can cover a lot of ground incorporating these two ideas. And I always tell people when they come into the academy that we want to do at least a 20-minute a day ritual, integrate these active practices into your day. And the people that follow that, if they do that for 1 year straight, 98% of them will do it for the rest of their life, because they'll see so many benefits from the practice that there's no reason why they would ever stop. The ones that stop are the ones that don't have the discipline and don't find the reason to stay consistent. And so as a new practitioner, if this is you out there listening to this, one of the things that I always recommend is, when you're thinking about taking on the meditative practice, always look inside and kind of feel like, what is it that's driving you to this practice? Why do you want to do it? Because if you have some strong whys, maybe you want to improve your health, or you want to reduce your stress, or you want to stay around longer to watch your grandkids grow up, or whatever that is, find what those whys are. So tomorrow morning, when your alarm goes off and you want to hit the snooze button, you have a reason to get up. Because if you do that and you find the discipline and stick with it in the beginning, it'll be one of the best things you've ever done for yourself. I guarantee it. And then
Wow.
lastly, our philosophical practices. And philosophical practices can be used as ritual or active practices. And they can be simple things as different mantras you're saying, different gratitude practices, different sayings that we memorize. There's many different philosophical sayings that teach us about mindset and strategy that we can integrate into our meditative practice. So with these kind of 3 different pillars, we can build an evolving life practice around the meditative arts.
Wow. Okay, so this is Johnny Ray with Ray on Sports. I'm here talking to Mr. Jeff Patterson about meditation. Another question for you, sir. How do I know what is the best meditation practice for me?
That's a good question, because as I mentioned earlier, there are many out there. And I think the most important thing is to find somebody that can help guide you. I have literally seen people come into the academy that have been doing meditation for 10, 15 years, and they'll come in here and I'll ask them, where have you been practicing? And they'll say, oh, I watched this YouTube video, or I listened to this audio program. And they'll come in here and they'll realize that they'll see students that have been following a guided path. And after 6 or 12 months, they'll be further along than they've been after, 10 or 15 years, and life is short. We're not here for very long. And this is something where it's easy to find a lot of good people out there that can help guide you on a meditative journey and cut down your time. And so find somebody to help you. Don't try to do it on your own. It's kind of like, if you have never played basketball before, and I take you to a basketball court, you've never seen the game, don't know one thing about it, and I say, here's a ball, go play basketball. How good are you going to be? It's even after 5 years of practice, if nobody's ever taught you a thing, how good are you going to be? You're not going to know much of anything, and the meditative arts is very complex. There's a lot involved in it. And if you don't have somebody helping you out, you could spend years and barely even learn how to tread water.
Wow. Okay. So why is the Yielding Warrior program different from any other meditation program?
One of the things that sets this program apart is that it's not geared around any one practice. It's about learning how to integrate the meditative arts and learn the science behind it, so you can build an evolving life practice with the meditative arts. And so it's very diverse in that there's lots of different directions, and it's not limited to any one focus.
Okay. Now I also put in the link for everybody's watching and listening, the link for your book, The Yielding Warrior, and it is a free copy, correct? That they can get, correct?
So if you go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book, you could get a free copy of the book. You just pay for shipping and handling. And if you don't want a physical copy, you go to the same website, theyieldingwarrior.com, and you can download a digital copy for free.
Okay. Now we talked about, let's go back to talking about stress, because I know a lot of us deal with stress a lot, and we talked about how to get these negative things out of your life and not hold on to things like that. Because we know people, all of us know people that there's either that one thing that always irritates you no matter what, or there's one person that always irritates you no matter what. How do you navigate through that? When you and this is going for people like that have to go to work every day with these people or have to deal with these people on a daily basis. How do you navigate through that?
It all comes back to the awareness that's developed through the practice. So when we get distracted or we get irritated, there's always an imbalance, something that kind of sets us off. And if we don't respond to that imbalance and we let that negative thought process or that negative momentum continue to build, one thing leads to another, to another, to another, and eventually we're just irate. The
Yeah.
idea is that when we can first notice that first sign of imbalance and come back to center and find our focus, we have less things that can take us down that negative path. You know, it's kind of like if you're standing on a mountainside and you drop a pebble, it's easy to bend over and pick up the pebble and nothing happens. But if the pebble starts rolling down the hill and creates an avalanche, it's really hard to stop the avalanche. And, you know, our negative thoughts in our mind are very similar to that. If we learn how to make those adjustments before they gain too much negative momentum, it's a lot easier to keep us on a positive path.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. For me myself, I try to see the the positive of everything. Even if it's negative, I try to pull some positive out of it. And my wife always tells me, how do I do it? How do I somebody that's like that, or some negative energy like that, how do I turn it into a positive? And I say I try to see the positive side of it, even if it's a negative event or a negative person. I try to see the good part of it, and that's what kind of keeps me steady and keeps me focused. So for somebody who can't do that, what could you suggest for them?
That would be to start doing a meditation practice, because you will
Okay.
develop the skill set to enhance your awareness and start seeing things like that detective that most people will never see. And once you start noticing those things with more sensitivity, you'll have the power to make the change, and it's like, and you think about in athletics, it's easy for a coach to take a group of disciplined athletes and get them to 85% of their potential. But try getting them to 90%, 95%, 97%. Now you're talking about these guys that reach these almost magical levels that you just don't see very often. Well, the meditative arts help you see those things in that 95, 96, 97 percentile. And when you can see things on that higher level, you're kind of aware of things in everything we do in life, a little bit more in tune with conversations, with situations, with anything going on that most people never see. And it's a lot easier to make those adjustments and keep it moving down a positive path when you can see those things with more detail.
Wow. Now, okay, so talking about meditation, how young can you start meditation? I'm sorry, I started to say medication. How long can you start medication? But how young can you start meditation? Because, we have our children and we try to calm them down, and, there's, all kind of different practices out there for that. How young for a child could you start it with? Because, their attention span is kind of hard to keep them focused. So how can you do that?
With children, I find that it's easier to get them introduced to some of these concepts with movement practices. So, doing some, for example, teaching them maybe a Tai Chi form, or maybe even a sword form, where they can start learning some of these foundational principles and this awareness training through something that's a little bit more distracting. And maybe they don't realize that they're doing it for the meditative benefits yet, but they get some of these foundational principles that when they get a little bit older and learn how to settle them in, they'll be ahead of the game.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're on Rail and Sport talking to Mr. Jeff Patterson um, about meditation, mastering stress, the meditative arts with the yielding warrior. And you said your background in that, were you playing sports, or were you in the martial arts, or how was that when you
I've been
started?
doing Yeah, so I've just been doing the martial arts now for 36 years. The meditation was brought to me from my boxing coach, and that's kind of what got me started with it.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Sounds good. All right, sir. Well, I appreciate you coming on with me. This has been very enlightening for me as well as everyone else who's listening. Is there anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, sir. Thank you very much for having me. It's been an honor to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Patterson. I appreciate you. All right, this has been another episode of Ray on Sports with Mr. Jeff Patterson. Make sure to pick up his book at www.theyieldingwarrior.com. That's www.theyieldingwarrior.com. And he is Mr. Jeff Patterson, meditation through meditation. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Patterson, for coming on. I appreciate it. It's been a wonderful experience. I got to have you back on again because we got to talk more, because I know there's more people that have questions about it that just they're trying to take it all in right now. But I'm sure after this episode, they'll have more questions about it. So if you're available, I would love to have you on again.
Yeah, I'd be honored to.
All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time, and thank you. And you have a great rest of your day.
You too. You too.
All right. That's been another episode of Ray on Sports. My name is Johnny Ray. I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you listening. Thank you for taking this ride with me. And until the next episode, thank you and God bless.